Hello everyone, this video is in our Chess960 series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler, and today we are looking at a space age game between Leela Zero and Slow Chess in the TCEC Season 21 Fischer Random tournament. Sometimes you see games played by engines in normal chess, but I think especially in Chess960, they just completely blow your mind. The way that pieces are activated, the way that activity is combined, the way that the very most is made of the unusual positions of the Chess960 pieces, and I think this is one of the finest examples of that I've ever seen. So let's get on to it. Let's have a little look first of all at the starting position. I think what you notice first of all is that the king on b1 is actually already castled. You could think of activating the rook by moving the queen out of the way, moving the bishop out of the way, and then castling. But in fact, that would just bring the king to c1, which is probably a worse square than b1. B1, the king's just a little bit safer. So that just seems a little bit of a waste of time, really. So from that point of view, you could really understand why it playing just a4 and a5 and looking to get its rook active by pushing the a pawn and gaining space that way, rather than castling queenside. Now, what we've also got, the queen is on c1. It's not on a1, as we've seen in other games. So this queen's always going to get active. So you don't need to worry about it too soon. What you've also got are pretty central knights. I mean, these knights can come to e3, f3, d3. So they're very, very good at supporting the centre. So in actual fact, some sort of central plan, would not be a bad idea at all. The only one you've got to be, you have to think a little bit about is the bishop on g1, which is on a rather awkward square. Obviously f3, f4 is possible. You could even think about developing it with h3 and bishop h2. So possibilities there. I mean, just thinking about it just with a bit of your normal chess hat on, you could sort of think of going e4, knight e3, c3, bishop c2, knight f3, d4. Go for a c3, d4, e4 pawn structure, a bit like a Lopez, really. I mean, that seems quite reasonable, really. What you could also think about would be to play the move d4, because after d4 the knight goes to d3, which is an excellent square, and of course the queen on c1 is supporting the c pawn, so that also gives you some ideas of doing that. And if this knight goes to d3, then the move f3 is possible, supporting e4. I had a game with Stockfish against Revenge on my 94 thread machine, and that went d4, d5, f3. That seems a little bit early to me, but the game continued a5, e4, d takes c4, takes e5, takes knight g6, knight f3. With complicated play. Revenge sacrificed a pawn here, maybe a little bit optimistic, but quite interesting, really. It's but that sort of plan is possible as well. Certainly some sort of plan with d4, d5, and then the knight coming to d3 and f3, c4. But Leela played the also very reasonable 1e4. Opens up the line of this bishop and looks to play d4, supported by the knights. So e5 played, and now a very interesting move by Leela. I mean, you often see that I think the engines, the best engines, also have some sense of delaying the positioning of their knights in particular, in order to really find out first what the pawn structure is going to look like. Because often in Chess960 you've got a lot more flexibility for the knights. A lot more interesting positions than you do from the standard starting position. Because here Leela plays a4. Now we've discussed that's good for activating this rook on a1, but quite a surprise really on the second move, where you sort of think from the standard chess point of view, develop your knights, but these knights can always exit. So a4 just sort of asks the question, really, are you going to try and stop me, or are you going to do something else? I do tend to favour playing a move like a5 just to stop the advance of the a pawn. I don't particularly like a wing being cramped too much in Chess960. I mean, in that case, some of my Stockfish Revenge games were carrying on knight f3, f6. Not normal in standard chess, but obviously a decent move to protect e5 because it opens the diagonal of the bishop. And then d4. And then, for example, knight d6, knight 1 d2, takes, knight e6, haha, f3, activating the bishop on g1. And after bishop e7, bishop e2, takes. Well, it's got a pleasant position there. Nice central advantage. The black piece is slightly cramped still. White could think of a number of things, but just playing a move like c4, for example, getting the queen out, casting kingside would be a pretty simple way to a nice advantage. So Slow didn't do that. Slow played f6, very reasonable move, just developing the bishop, also supporting e5, just getting ready for a future knight f3, and Leela played a5. Again, just waiting for black to commit itself. And here Slow took a big decision. It played the move d5. And, in some ways it's very, very logical. What could be illogical about putting something in the center? Somehow I find the centres are quite a fluid concept in Chess960. Quite similar to shogi, actually, where we're very used in chess to having the centre as the key important thing. But in shogi it's relatively unimportant in actual fact. And somehow in Chess960 you often feel the same. Just depending on how the pieces are grouped, coming around the wings can really be a very powerful approach. And well, you're going to see it in this game. I think the downside to playing d5 is that it really makes sense of this move a6 because after d5 you've got central pawns on the dark squares, the weak squares around are weakened, and now White's getting this move a6 in, which is going to weaken some queenside light squares. So it really does make sense of White's play there, and you can see a sort of lead in development for black. But on the other hand, we're going to get some tempos with knight e3, so it's not all clear really. And a bishop in the center so early, not the most stable piece. Knights are very stable in the center, but bishops, you often don't want them to be exchanged for a knight, so they'll often have to move again. Now, one very interesting thing that I saw in lots of my engine games was how is White going to develop this bishop on g1? And actually what was happening was that after, for example, knight d6, this was revenge against Stockfish, h4 was played. And the idea actually is we're going to point the bishops towards the black king. So knight e3, bishop c6, bishop h2, setting up the bishop along this diagonal, threatening f4, bishop c7, bishop g4, f5, bishop h3, and these two bishops pointing towards the king. You also see it in the game as well. Very, very interesting play there. Actually, this was a fascinating game from Revenge. Queen e6, b4 played, takes queen b2, hitting e5 and b4, and after knight d7, then knight d3, hitting e5 and b4 again. But here, black seems to be in quite a bit of trouble actually, but you mustn't forget one key thing of white castles and black castles, and actually all of a sudden this pressure that White's got on the queen side is not so important because the black king is miles away. It's I think certainly that's always one of the key reactions. As soon as a move like this happens, you'll really I think both sides are thinking all the time about kingside casting, or they should be, about getting the king away from there, because that's probably the best way that that black has got to negate White's play. There's no point in playing against it. You should just try and make sure you get your king as far away as possible. Slow played c5. Kind of trying to clamp down on the centre, playing some sort of Maroczy bind, which is not a bad idea at all. But somehow, it's just the Chess960 positioning just makes it kind of tricky for black. And Leela really exploits this beautifully. Bishop g4, shocking little move, activating the bishop here, and kind of cutting across the black king. Knight e6 played, and now this lovely move h4. What's the idea of h4? Well, the idea is that after h5, we can just have a spot on h3 for the bishop. It's safe. It's on that annoying diagonal, pinning the knight on e6. And of course, it's giving the bishop on g1 room to come out with bishop h2, and we've got knight d3, we've got f4. Lots of attacking ideas, and this king is still on b8, and there's a lot of pieces to move before black can castle kingside. So quite worrying, really. So yeah, there are some interesting games here. So knight c7 played, trying to force white to do something with this a6 pawn. And here Leela played a stunning move. Actually, one game that Stockfish played was very interesting. Stockfish played knight d3, actually threatening knight takes c5, exploiting this pin. It's really, you've got to be so alert when you're playing Chess960, because so many threats are coming that you just wouldn't expect to be a threat normally. This bishop wouldn't normally be on h3 in a Maroczy bind structure. Bishop e7, bishop h2. And after b5, knight f5, queen f8, Stockfish played this move, bishop takes e5. Not even bothering with a move like f4, just sacking directly. And yeah, it looks dangerous. Thing is, you wouldn't really be sure, is this good, is this not? But this turned out to be unbelievably powerful for Stockfish. I think the key point about it is that the bishop gets forced to e8. And then that means that the black king is again a long way from castling to safety on the king side, which means that the white's attack is going to be very dangerous. Just show you a few more moves, see how it went. Queen e4, threatening queen b7, knight d8, rook d1. All the pieces are working. We're threatening d3 to activate. Takes, bishop d7, rook f3. Queen f6, queen g3. We've still got the pin on the knight on c7, and the knight on d8 is still in the way, so very, very difficult. Takes, and then d4. Threatened to come through with d5, d6. Takes, rook e8. Now black can't castle kingside anymore, so rook e5, takes. White exchanging off black's active pieces, leaving him with passive pieces. The the AlphaZero, or rather, the theme that we saw so clearly in these AlphaZero Stockfish games, and that we've seen so often in subsequent engine games. And yeah, this was just really powerful, an attack that kept on going, really, and Stockfish won in a few more moves. So very, very interesting play, but again showing the power of this of this unusual setup with bishops on h3 and h2. It's all to do with the fact that the king on b8 just finds it hard to get away. Leela played a fantastic move, really amazing, f4. So, just blasting open the centre, exploiting the fact that this knight is pinned, so knight f4 would allow bishop takes c8, of course. So e takes f4, and now ab, and knight c4. And we're kind of moving away with gain of tempo, because this knight is threatening knight a5, forking bishop and queen, which is going to be quite awkward. Now there comes something which is completely far from obvious. Now I think it was really only Stockfish that managed to defend this position from now on. It played this move queen b5, and after knight a5 played c4, really trying to get hold of some squares on the queen side and stop white playing stuff like rook a3 to b3. And after d3, c3, rook a3, bishop d5, Stockfish was really fighting there to prevent white from really getting active on the queen side. It was a very, very difficult position, but Stockfish somehow held it. Slow played bishop e7, which is very reasonable. We want to get over and castle kingside, don't we? The longest castling, I think, that you can have in Chess960. Knight a5, queen b6, and now a really stunning move. And I did not understand the point of this at all. It's only when looking at it afterwards that something suddenly clicked. And it's this move, bishop f5. And it's a really multi-purpose move here. First of all, white is increasing the urgency of black's kingside castling enormously, because we're not going to go for rook a3 to b3, which is, fine, also dangerous, but it's only you lose the power of the rook on the a file, really, which is quite interesting to have, certainly combining with a bishop along this diagonal. But actually it's intending rook h3 to b3. So the bishop on f5 is freeing h3 through the rook. The pawn on h4 has also activated the rook, and we're able to transfer this rook along the third rank. I mean, really beautifully making use of the positions of the Chess960 pieces. That's one threat. But the other big threat, which I hadn't understood at all, was that after castles, you can play knight c6 takes, and then the move queen d1. And do you know, as my 7-year-old nephew always says to me, this bishop on f5 is stopping black from playing g6 to defend the pawn on h5. So what that means is that black's in huge trouble on the king side. So I mean, in a number of games, actually, we got some fantastic games here between Revenge and Stockfish, and also Stockfish and Revenge. So rook fd8 was played, queen takes h5, rook d2, bishop g6, threatening queen h7 check, queen h8, bishop d6, giving the king an escape square, king c1, beautiful idea. The rook on d2 now is short of squares, rook d5, queen h7 check, and bishop e4, and the bishop pins the rook. c4 takes, knight f3, and here it's a question of can black create anything before white gets the pieces active, because I mean, it's not going to take white long either, because obviously this king on f8 is in big trouble. Queen b7, bishop f2, rook b8, hitting b2, rook d1, very cunningly ignoring it. We've just got queen b2, we go king d2, we're going to escape. We've got a safe square over there. King f7, and now there were some great things there. I mean, here in the game Revenge against Stockfish on my 94 thread machine, rook a2 was met by bishop a3. Great little move. Obviously b takes a3. I've got queen b1 check, takes a2 in the end. Rook a3, I've got queen b2. So rook d7 check, king e8, rook g7. How is this not losing? Takes there, knight g7, queen g8, takes there, king d6, knight d2, rook d8, checks all over the place, rook a7 comes in, queen c8. This must be completely lost, right? But after king e2, king c6, queen f7 takes, rook a6, king d5. Somehow Stockfish managed to hold this together and keep the draw. So amazing stuff from Stockfish there. When Stockfish played white, Stockfish just played king d2 actually, which was much simpler. Just bringing the king over here, giving this pawn away, and then later just hitting the king. I mean, that was castles. I think was probably better, but still very, very dangerous. After bishop f5, slow played g5. I think trying to keep its king side together, also giving yourself an idea of knight g7 if you need to defend the pawn on h5. But actually now the tactics hit black, and you notice that it's not only the king that's in trouble, it's also the black queen. So rook h3. I mean, look at this development. Incredible, right? I mean, this bishop has made 1, 2, 3 moves. This knight is still on e1, the bishop's still on g1. This knight's made lots and lots of moves. Knight f1 to e3 to c4. We played the pawn all the way up to a6. White's a pawn down, but black's just virtually lost here. Stockfish was getting very, very unhappy in these positions, and not doing a good job of surviving. So then that it's serious business basically. Slow castled. Look at that. Wow, should we just see that again? Whee! Castles. Rook b3, queen a6, bishop d3. And suddenly, black's in awful trouble with its pieces and with its queen as well. And that's a big value, of course, of having had a rook on a1. If you'd gone rook a3 to b3, then the a5 knight would have been hanging. Bishop b5, and now this exchange sacrifice, queen d1, knight g7 and hg. And it might not at all seem obvious that that black's in trouble in this position. And well, I certainly don't blame you for thinking that. I think the key thing about it is that there's a lot of loose pieces. First of all, e7, b5, and also the queen on a6 is very uncomfortable. There's just a huge amount of space on the light squares. It's all to do with this bishop on d3. So, for example, if you go fg, I go queen e2, hitting 2 loose pieces. Rook a b8. I could take the bishop on e7, but then I'd get hit with rook e8, and my knight on e1 would hang. But I go queen e4, and I've got queen h7 check, bishop c4 check coming in. It's really nasty. Here, there, here, knight d3. And of course, this rook on a1 is also going to be ready to come in on the a file if you're not careful. So rook b6, queen e4. I mean, we've got so many moves here. We've got knight e5 coming in. We've got bishop takes c5. And all here, black's just not able to put up any real resistance on the light squares. So f3 takes, fg takes queen g2 was one of my Stockfish revenge games. Rook f5, knight c6. Knight a3, takes, glorious move b4, cutting off the bishop on a3, threatening queen e4 check, coming into e7 afterwards. King d7, knight e5, king c7, c3. Why would you need to hurry? You're just going to pick up the bishop and b material up. Takes, rook e5, knight e5. And well, that was material, and Stockfish won very quickly. I mean, you don't need to, to understand all of the tactics in order to just to see, how dangerous and how porous those light squares are. I mean, if I saw this position, I say, wow, White's really got a lot of compensation. I wouldn't realise, of course, that it's something like +3, +4. I mean, that's too much. But of course, yeah, it does look really dangerous, and you do see very easy development continuations for White. So from a practical point of view, you're not too worried because you know that you've always got moves. Well, Slow after HG didn't play FG, played Queen B6, and now Leela hammered in a thorn pawn on G6, and again, it's quite unpleasant, really. This G6 pawn means that, well, we've also got a nice outpost on F7 for a white piece, like a bishop, for example. Also means that Black's going to find it even more difficult to put any barriers along the A2 G8 diagonal. And of course, there's this pawn on H5, which could easily be attacked in some way if the king moves to the corner. Try it as Black might, it's very hard to create play against the white king. We're going to have a knight on c4, knight on d3, covering everything on light squares, which are hard for Black to get at. And if White's king is saved, that just means that White's got plenty of time to repair the onslaught against the king. Again, not saying that I would think that this was completely winning, but I'd definitely be thinking, I'm doing pretty well here. In actual fact, I think all of my games, engine games, something like 20 or 30, they all ended up as wins for White in this position. Even Stockfish wasn't holding this. So let's have a look how this game continued. Just encroaching on the light squares, basically. Rook c8, bishop e4. Very nice move, this one, because it shows the setup that we're going to do. We're not putting the bishop on c4. We're putting the bishop on d5. This knight's coming round to d3. Also thinking about taking the pawn on f4. And after bishop e5, we go knight c4. And these two knights are really beautiful. Defending the pawn on b2. Also maybe thinking of taking on e5, sorry. And this knight can also take on f4. And after queen c7, rook a6. Wow, there we are. The a pawn, pushed so early, move 2 already. A pawn on a6, I think on move 5 already. And now we see the value of it. There was no point in casting queenside. The rook comes and gets itself active on a6. And it's just, you would have thought, this is a loose piece on d5. Can't we get at it somehow? But yeah, really, really tough. So knight d4 was played, bishop d4. White doesn't mind that at all because this bishop on g1 was not doing a great deal. And that knight was possibly a dangerous attacking piece. b3 now, consolidating the knight on c4. And we're just so solid on the king side now, and it's a question of starting to get at the the black king, and if this bishop gets attacked, we just put it on f7, and well, perfectly safe there. Rook f8, queen e4, just shuffling round on the sort of the light square outpost there. You know, just putting more pressure on. e5 is under pressure now. f3 played, g takes f3, bishop g3, f4, and now actually the this bishop's in trouble now as well. So rook cd8, rook a5, very nice move. Those are quite difficult moves to see, I think, you know, if you're going to play the position optimally. But that rook on a5 is beautiful. It defends the bishop on d5, but you could also think of doing something like bishop f3 and then just taking the h-pawn as well. So it's you know, now that the bishop has moved from e5, it's on h4, the rook doesn't need to be on a6 anymore. a5 is an even better square, and that's made possible by these entrenched white pieces on the light squares. Keep on talking about these entrenched pieces. It's a term I coined in the Silicon Road to chess improvement. I think it's I like it very much, actually. You know, referring to pieces that really look like they've been hammered into the board and will just never be distracted from their posts. So rook d8, queen h3. That bishop on h4 is a goner. Queen takes h4, and now it's just mopping up, really. You know, this is just white's got a material advantage, and black's king is weak, and it's just a question of bringing the pieces in. Knight coming into g6 now, taking another pawn with a pin along the 7th rank. Rook e8, bishop e6, won the queen, and the game didn't last long at all. Yeah, I mean, I hope you really enjoyed that as much as I did. I thought it was a deeply impressive game. I love this very quick plan of a4. Makes perfect sense when the king's already in a castled state. Yeah, I mean, I think this plan of putting the bishops on h3 and, you know, looking for play h2 along the h2 b8 diagonal was amazing. You know, it was really completely unexpected, and I mean, there were many amazing ideas in the Stockfish Revenge games, but what Leela did with this pawn sacrifice and you know, was quite incredible. And this move, bishop f5, was the absolute pearl, really, stopping g6, so making kingside castling enormously dangerous for black. And of course, you know, the king on the queen side is under very big threat as well. And then also allowing this move rook h3 to b3, really making optimal use of all white's pieces. Really amazing game, and, you know, really gives you an idea of the power of the Chess960 pieces when when a genius like Leela is working on it. So there we are. I hope you enjoyed that. If you enjoyed the video, why not start the new year with a bang and give me a like and even a subscribe, and do take a look at my book, The Silicon Road to Chess Improvement, you know, which looks at so many amazing engine games, and also discusses in a lot of detail with a lot of interesting ideas how to train with engines properly, not just the normal ways that everyone knows, but lots of interesting and innovative ways. Yeah, otherwise hope you're going to come back, and hopefully see you for the next video. Thanks for watching.